Out of any box that you buy in your life, most likely you've kept an Apple box. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of a productivity in order to increase our employees' wins because, like I said, happy employees, happy results.
But when I got the product in hand, actually it came in just like a plastic bag. And to this day, a little bit of a weird feeling like, man, that company didn't really care about me. They didn't even bother to put it at least in like a nice box or something like that.
My only requirement for our entire team is as long as the work gets done, I do not care what time you clock in and clock out. I don't care where you work from. You can work on a beach. As long as the work gets done, it doesn't matter to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ops Talk with Paired, the podcast where we dive deep into how businesses run behind the scenes. I'm your host, Martin, and today we're talking all things operations, staffing, and strategy with Jason Wong. Jason, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
So Jason is the founder of Packing Duck, a packaging manufacturer that helps high-growth consumer brands with unique packaging. And the reason I'm excited to have him on today is because Jason has started multiple companies in the consumer product space, generating over 8 figures in revenue. He's basically an expert at building D2C businesses. So I'm excited to see what we can learn from him today. And let's just jump straight into it. Jason, as I was doing some research on you, obviously I saw Packing Duck, the company that you're working on currently, but I also just saw a history of so many different companies. And it seems like you've been in the e-commerce sort of consumer space forever. And I'm really curious how you got started. How did your business or entrepreneurial journey really start?
I mean, man, it's been almost 11 years now since I shipped my first order out of a living room. And I think the inspiration for that is I just really want to create something. You know, I grew up in a household that was very straightforward of the career path that I was supposed to take and things that I should be doing. And a part of me was just thinking I need to do something more than that. And I got this opportunity to sell stuff online because I took this interest to study social media. This is the rise of all the social medias that you know today, Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot. And so while I was studying that, I became one of those guys who were posting a lot online. I gathered somewhat of a following. And I was like, you know what? A way for me to monetize this. And I was 14 years old at that point. I was like, for me to monetize this, I should probably sell some stuff. And that's really how I got into it. It was slowly and surely selling one thing, 2 things, 3 things, and just learn from there. There's no course. There's no YouTube videos back then. You just had to do it.
Gotcha. And did that business already succeed, or did you have to get a few failures in before things
absolutely. I mean, the first company was a clothing company, and, you know, I think it succeeded at my level, at my age. You know, it made me a couple $100,000 a year for a young kid. That was very good. Looking back, that's obviously nothing, right? But I think it was necessary for me to go through that and try new things and experience what success feels like to want more. And sometimes 200K was a lot, and that's just enough for me to say, hey, actually, there's enough confidence for me to keep going. And then in between that and now, there's obviously a lot of failures, more failures than I can count. Probably an 8-to-2 ratio or a 1-to-4 ratio of success and failure. And like I say, it's always necessary for you to fail. Like, you need to go through those hardships and struggles for you to know what you want to do next.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, I can imagine 200K per year company for a younger person just starting out probably felt like, you know, you were like on the top of the world, basically.
Yeah, I mean, for a young kid, right? You know, I was in high school. That was a lot of money. And then the next business didn't work out. And the third business made 200K a week. And so it was such a big jump from swimming in the kiddie pool to like now, okay, we're now doing some really big numbers. And nothing was in place. I didn't know how to hire. I didn't know how to do operations. I didn't know how to do logistics. I just had to figure it out. And like I said, back then, there was no tutorials. Right? Like, it was just in recent years where people were making YouTube videos on how things were done. But for many, many years, there was nothing out there that taught us what we had to do.
Yeah. So if you could go back to your younger self, what are some of the most important the essential advice you would give your younger self?
One is have a very clear purpose of why. And I think for the longest time, I had a sense of it, but I wasn't fully sure on like why I wanted to do it. When I first started the company, it was a means to survival. It was a means to get out of the path that I thought I was going to take out, but I wasn't happy in, right? Like I thought I was going to go to school, get a degree, go work a job, do something like that. And I knew that that wasn't something that I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life. And so for the longest time, the motivation for being an entrepreneur was to get out of that. Secondly, now it's trying to create a lasting legacy, something to get my family out of the hardships, create a better future for my kids. So there's a greater sense of purpose. So one is finding your why. Number two is just think twice. I think especially people in my generation, we like to rush things and for good reasons, right? Like there's so many things going on. You just want to get everything done. You want to do a million things every single day. You want to get things done in 1/10 of the time. But it's really important to just slow down and breathe and really think twice about the things that you do and do things with intention. And I think following that advice earlier on would have allowed me to make a lot less mistakes rather than just saying, hey, let's just go head on. There is a right balance to going into things head on because I do think you need to try new things and fail, but just take a step back sometimes.
Makes sense. What was assuming that the first business that you said that was making like 200K per month or per week, was that explosive growth already in the D2C space?
That was purely accident. It was a coloring book that I made called the Holy Meme Bible. And the concept for the Holy Meme Bible was to basically take the entire year's trending topics, pop culture, memes, and put it into a coloring book. So imagine like you look back in 2024 of all the funny moments on TV, all the memes that you saw on Twitter, everything you can think of on Instagram, and like condense it into a coloring book, which sounds very silly in hindsight, but this is back in 2016 when no one was doing anything like this. Back then, people put memes on t-shirts and call it a day. It's funny. It's on a t-shirt. But I was thinking about a new medium for us to translate pop culture. And for me, it was coloring book because there's a sense of nostalgic for people who are using it. And obviously, it was all adults who are doing these coloring books. And second, it was a great way for us to commemorate the things that happened in a year. So it almost became like a yearbook. And I think these two factors really made the book successful because it was just so out of the ordinary. And so it went viral. It got covered in different newspaper, different websites, and it was just so ridiculous that people shared it. And when they shared it, it snowballed, and then we one day make 4K, the next day make 7K, so on and so forth. And by the end of the week, we made $250,000.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. Good. Is this still going? Because that sounds like something that could still work today.
No, I did that for about 5 years and segued out to a board game. We did a candle, a bath bomb brand. We did a cookbook. There was an entire series around that same concept. And then eventually I sold that company 5 years later.
Okay, amazing. Is that the first company where you actually had to build a team around yourself?
Around that time, this was like where I learned to start delegating. And I truly believe that I didn't do a good job at it. I hired people to do the work, but I didn't really know how to hire people to think. There were just a lot of delegating and say, hey, do A, B, C. Whereas I think looking back now, I could have been a more effective leader if I just told them the direction that we want to go into and then let them have a lot more direction and discretion on how they want to do things. But there's also a fallacy to doing that because what if you give the wrong people too much control to do things and then they just completely screw it up? And that really comes down to hiring the right people. And so for the longest time, I just hired the wrong people. I hired people who were just there to clock in, clock out, and call it a day. And the challenge is A players only want to work with A players, right? Like if you go into work right now and you see your teammates are slacking and they're lazy and they don't want to do anything, that doesn't motivate you to want to work harder. And so I think for a CEO or anyone in the company who is focusing on people and recruiting, you need to be able to know who to hire and how they fit within the team. Because one bad apple can really ruin the whole bunch.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And what you said about delegating too much, I find that at least the founders that we work with at Paired, this is one of the most common fears, right? Mm-hmm. There's this dilemma of, I want to delegate this. I don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to have to think about it. And at the same time, I'm so attached to it. I don't want to give control over to someone else.
Absolutely. And that's really where you as a founder need to sit down and think about your zones of genius, right? Like what are the things that you're absolutely good at that no one else at the company can do? And that's really why you're the founder. You're the founder because you possess a particular skill that no one else at the company can match you on. And that's what you need to focus on. And anything outside of that circle needs to be delegated. And that's a very clear parameter that you need to set with yourself. because if you're doing things that you're really good at and things that you're not good at, that's on you as a founder for your failure to delegate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've built a number of businesses now. I'm curious if you have like a goal to sort of hiring process, a way that you filter for A players in a more efficient way.
There's a lot of people that will get through the filters. Their resume looks great. And now there's AI that writes resume and they all sound really, really good. They have a lot of buzzwords and whatnot. And so I would say like, obviously resume is just one part of it, but really the first interview that we have with a candidate, we can usually see through it because a lot of people like to take credit for accomplishments that are more of a team effort. So if you're saying that you generated $10 million in revenue for XYZ, well, how many people were on your team and what did you really do on that team? Were you just there to coordinate or were you really the leader for it? And those are the questions that you can really just ask in the first screening interviews. The second thing is paying attention to how someone asks questions about the job. The more question they have is usually a green flag for me because it means they're trying to clarify and understand the positions a little bit more. If they don't ask questions and they think they know it all, well, that's a red flag because sometimes we don't even know everything. And we need to talk to you about to figure out exactly what are the voids that we're missing. And that's really why we want to hire you, right? Because we hire people to do things that we feel like someone else is better than us at doing. And so if you're not asking questions to try to understand and contribute your ideas, I don't really feel like you really know what you're talking about.
Is there anything else that you look out for? So obviously you're looking for someone that doesn't just take credit for accomplishments, someone that asks questions. Any other sort of red flags or even green flags that you've discovered?
Green flags is follow-ups. I like people that follow up. I like people that do research on our company prior to the interviews. And I'm just like a quick research is more than sufficient, right? Like I know that from a employee perspective, you might be applying to 100 jobs and you can't do research on 100 companies. But just knowing what we do and some idea of what we do, it's already a green flag for us. And you'll be surprised at how many people don't do their homework before coming to the meeting, right? The other thing is there's certain traits that you look for in different roles. And that's really where the difference of expectation needs to be. If you're hiring just a coordinator versus if you're hiring just a manager, there's a different level set of expectation and characteristics that each of these roles needs to have. And those are the things that you want to look out for during those interviews. You shouldn't have an expectation for a manager if you're just interviewing for an entry-level role, right? Managers need to be a little bit more detail-oriented. They need to be able to see a bigger picture. They need to have a better foresight on where things are and what things can go wrong and fix it before it happens. And that usually will come with the way that they communicate their thought process when they talk to you. Are they thinking a little bit ahead or are they just thinking about right now? Because if they're just thinking about right now, that's not a manager. That's just someone who you delegate tasks to.
Yeah. That makes total sense. So do you have any stories or any instances where you had a really successful hire that had a massive impact on the business that you could talk about?
Yeah, I actually came from Pear. Not to plug you guys, but I do use you guys for recruiting. My chief of staff and EA, Joanne, was hired through Pear, and she was just instrumental to the company because I've had a lot of EAs before. And the challenge with a lot of my previous hires, they're all great people, but they just weren't particularly the right fit for the roles because I think EAs are supposed to look out for things that you don't see. They're supposed to be your passenger that is reading the maps to you and helping you get to your destination. They're not someone you just tell them to say, hey, send this document, send this contract, right? Like you can hire anyone to fill that role, but a really good EA is someone who is doing that. Someone who is now documenting that process, remembering how to do it next. And next time when something that could use them to send a contract, they'll be like, hey, by the way, I just got this done for you already. Someone who's proactive, someone who's 2-3 steps ahead of you. And we found them through Pear. She was very instrumental because it took a lot of weight off my head. If I have to do something and then remember to tell you to do something because you're my assistant, that's already 30% more work for me. If I'm doing something and you're there and you're like, hey, by the way, I know that you needed me to do this. I got it done already. Here's everything that I've done already. That's already a huge help for me because I no longer have to take up that brain space to think about what to give you. And then someone who's just really good at communicating, very proactive, like I said, someone who's very detail oriented. And I think she was the first hire I had where I was like, that's really the gold standard for like how all hires should be.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I agree with you. Having a good assistant it's a very high leverage position. Even if
Uh-huh.
assistants they're a bit underrated, I feel like, because if you have someone that's really proactive, it can make such a big difference. I'm just curious, did you have any, doubts or holdups about hiring someone and then as an executive assistant, they will have access to so many things that are kind of private to you or personal, they'll have this inside look into your life.
Right.
Did you have doubts about that or how did you deal with that?
Well, there's always that fear, right? You have to be extremely vulnerable. All your guards are down because this person now have access to your phone number, your bank account. She can do whatever she wants with it. There's a high degree of trust, but her resume shows that she's worked with a lot of people, even bigger than what I am
Yeah.
in terms of career and success and wealth. So I was like, okay, if they've had success with her, I can definitely trust her. So that's one. And that's really where the recruiter comes in, right? Like someone who's able to vet that person for you. And the other thing is I operate in a good balance of I trust a lot, but I'm also very careful and I'm very quick to cut if I sense there's any danger. And so I always give people a benefit of the doubt, but as soon as I sense any tingling of suspicion that this is a threat to me, I end it immediately. And I like to say that our company pays well, we have good benefits, and it's generally a really good place to work at. And most people just wouldn't jeopardize that for a quick little, anything they want to do to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense because it's just not worth it, right? Like the payoff of doing anything sketchy rather than just staying with the job and continue. It just doesn't work out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm so curious, man. At Packing Doc, for example, do you guys have a fully remote team? Do you guys do hybrid? How do you structure your team with like local talent or talent abroad?
Our team is mostly remote. I would say 90% of them are remote. We have hires scattered across the Middle East, Malaysia, Indonesia, China. Yeah, those few countries primarily. We do have our office in China for our logistics team, which is someone that you need to be on the grounds with. But then our account managers, our project managers, our designers are all over the place. Generally, they do work in their own time zone. I don't ask them to work my time zone just because I've been in Asia before. Working US time zone is extremely taxing, and I don't want our employees to have to do that. There's a right balance, right? I always tell our clients, you're working with a team that's in Asia, so expect Asia time. I like to prioritize my employees' health and happiness over, an extra little profit here and there.
Okay. Why do you think that's important?
Well, longevity is important to me. And I think something that I'm very proud of is the tenure time of our team. Most people have been with us for almost the entire length of our company's history. And I think that one allows us to upskill them, to promote them internally, which allows us to reduce the amount of training and loss of contacts and loss of relationships. And then secondly, happier employees just produce happier results. It's very, very simple as that. Is there a science behind it? I don't really know, but it's worked for us so far.
I think anybody that's interested in working at Packing Doc or one of your companies will be happy to hear that. I definitely see that. Yeah, companies that focus more on keeping the employees happy. Longevity is one thing, but also like you'll probably get more joy out of engaging with your own team when they're happy to be there. And we see that as paired as well, is that some people will get into hiring abroad with this idea of exploitation is maybe a strong word, but people want the world for like $4 an hour, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to realize that even if you have someone on your team in Asia working abroad, they're still human and they still want to be compensated fairly. You're still going to get what you pay for, basically.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there is a larger amount of supply for a lot of brands if they hire outside of their home country. And with a large supply, it creates this market where there is a very low end of salary range versus a very wide range of salary range. You could hire someone for $4 and you're going to get $4 of quality, right? My goal for hiring outside isn't to just save money, but it's to pay top dollars, even above market for the best talent. That is still a fraction of what we pay in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting, man. So you've been in the game for over 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, how have you seen remote work change through that time? Remote work, it seems like our sort of work culture has changed a lot. I'm curious about your perspective on that.
It's definitely changed a lot, and there will be people that take advantage of that. There's enough people that take advantage of it for a lot of companies to get back to on-site. But I'm a firm believer in remote work. I like working remotely too. I don't like to just sit in a cubicle and work all day. I do think there is merit to in-person working. There's a lot of creative ideas that you just want to chop it up in person. So we do have on-sites for our team in person a couple times a year. At the end of the day, a lot of our employees have lifestyles that I personally am not in. Some of them are mothers, some of them are fathers, some of them need to take care of their family. And so if I'm able to provide a workspace where they are able to, one, still contribute to our company, and two, help their family and be with their kids and whatnot, and in turn, that makes them happier, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of a productivity in order to increase our employees' happiness, because like I said, happy employees, happy results. My only requirement for our entire team is as long as the work gets done, I do not care what time you clock in and clock out. I don't care where you work from. You can work on a beach. As long as the work gets done, it doesn't matter to me.
And it seems like that approach worked out so far.
So far, yes. But I think we've done this long enough time and we've produced enough results for us to say it does work for us, but I can't say it works for everyone. Like sometimes you listen to these podcasts and people will say this is the exact right way to do X and this is a way to make money and be successful. I don't believe in that. I think every company has their own set of rules and policies that work for them, right? Just like every household have their own way of raising their own kids. There's not one singular way that is the golden rule. But for my business in particular, we are fortunate to be able to work remote because our clients are all over the world. And so I want to create a workspace and foster the environment that I personally want to work in. And I know that I'm not the type of person that wants to just go into a cubicle and work 9 hours a day. And so how could I expect my team to do that? I think integrity and honesty is a big pillar in our company. I just tell people, if you're going on vacations, tell me I'm going on vacation. Don't pretend that you're still at work and answering emails, but you take 18 hours to reply. Like if you're going on break, just let me know, we'll delegate it to someone else. And, having that open conversation, transparency has helped a lot too.
Yeah. That's very interesting to hear. So I'm also curious if you've seen over this past decade or so, just like the online business space changed, the e-commerce space changed. How are things different now than they were when you started?
Things are definitely a lot more accessible now. There's a lot more tools for people to get started. When I started over a decade ago, there just wasn't a lot of knowledge about what to do. There wasn't a lot of resources to help you get started. And now there's a bajillion YouTube videos showing you step by step on how to create your own business and how to hire your first people. Back then, there wasn't a lot of resources for us to hire contractors and even hiring internationally. And now there is. If we want to make a contract, we will have to hire a lawyer for $100 an hour to make a contract that an AI can make now. And so I think the playing field has definitely got a lot more even. It's no longer you have to have a lot of money to start a company. You can now have nothing and start a company, which is great. I think it fosters innovations. If it creates a lot more competition, which in turn just makes us work a lot harder to be a better version of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you see that sort of bar of entry being lower as a net positive? Because like you said, it's so much cheaper, almost free to start your own company now. Or is it a net negative because now any niche of product or service can just get super saturated within weeks or months?
I think it's bad for people who don't innovate. If you want to just create a company and you think you can't be successful because you can do the bare minimum, it's a very, very bad thing for you to have this much competition. If you are someone who is striving to be unique, you want to stand out and you'll work hard to stand out, then all these people who are just starting out will be nowhere close to you.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the wave right now in the DTC space? What is that new opportunity that a lot of people might not be aware of yet?
Well, rising tide lifts all ships, right? It's a thing where when there's a huge market, a lot of adjacent things also come through, right? And so when headphones first came out, you're not going to start the next headphone company, but you can probably sell the bag that headphones can come in. Or maybe you can sell accessories for it because now more people are wearing headphones. You can sell more accessories because there's more people selling headphones. And the same thing for online businesses. When there's more people doing online businesses, there's a lot of adjacent business that you can create, like a recruiting firm, right? Your total addressable market for a recruiting firm, for an international contractor, is 10, 50, 100 times bigger than 10 years ago, just because there's a lot more people doing online businesses now. And so the trend right now in e-commerce isn't just selling product, but it's a lot of supporting companies. You don't have to sell a product to be in the e-commerce space. You can still be a service provider. You could be a supply chain partner. You could be a consultant. There are so many things that you can make money from, because your business should be, if you can make people money, you deserve a little bit of money for that too. And so if you're a person that has an idea for how to make more money for X person, turn that into your business.
Right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're basically saying when there's a gold rush, sell shovel.
Exactly.
I hear you, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jason. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious, what made you start Packing Duck? Tell us about the business that you're working on currently.
Yeah, I started Packing Duck not too long ago, really to solve my own pain point, but also a lot of my friends' pain point. So I was running my own e-commerce brands, a portfolio of them. And one of the things I always loved to do was our own packaging. We had a lot of unique packaging that people loved, people collected, people bought just because of the packaging. And so one day I was like, okay, I really want to do something else because I've been doing e-commerce for so long. What is the next thing I want to get into? And my criteria for starting a company was very simple. It needs to have a large enough market that everyone needs. It needs to have a high return customer rate. So I'm not just fighting tooth and nail for attention every single day. And then the third thing is it needs to be something that is repeatable and can have people coming back over and over and over again. And this is a train ride. I was going to Guangzhou with my partner at the time. And I was just thinking, why don't I just get into the packaging business? Because one, I already like doing this. Like this is something that I have a very clear why for. And packaging is something that every single consumer brand company in the world needs. It doesn't matter if you're selling a fork. It doesn't matter if you're selling a washing machine. Both of those things will come in a packaging to some extent. Packaging is $1 trillion industry. Yet if I tell you, hey, go find a packaging supplier, you'll have to still Google it. There's no like name that comes up in your head when you're like, oh, there's like a packaging supplier. But when I ask you like, who's the supplier for gas in your local countries, there's 5 names you can think of. There's the gas station 1, gas station 2, gas station 3. Right. But if I ask you for packaging, most people cannot tell you an answer. Right. And the reason for that is because manufacturing is extremely ethical. Most of the people who are running manufacturing companies are in their 40s and 50s, and they've been doing that for the last 20, 30 years, which is great. But they haven't innovated because manufacturing hates innovation in a sense where if something's working already, why change it? And only the newcomers on a block are really the people who are embracing change. And so the newcomers are bringing in new printing technology. They're bringing in new marketing strategies. They're bringing in new branding opportunities. And so where I bring into this industry is we come in as a manufacturer that are started by people who have done e-commerce business. Most manufacturers have been doing manufacture their entire life. They don't understand the nuances of running a company. They don't understand the compliances of selling into a Walmart. They don't understand the financial complications of running an e-commerce business. They just don't understand a lot of things that business owners go through on our side. And so where we come in is every single person on our team have previously founded a DTC company of their own and succeeded in that. And we took an approach where we went branding and marketing first, rather than manufacturing heavy. And so we built a brand around that. If you were to go on Google right now and look for a packaging supplier factory in China, most of the names are probably like China Printing Technology Co. Limited or whatever. And if you go on Google right now and type in packaging supplier, there's a bunch of suppliers with names that you just never remember. So I was like, why don't we make manufacturing cool, right? Like manufacturer sounds kind of boring. When you say manufacturing, you're thinking about machines running in the back, churning over and over and over again. But what if we make it cool? And so I took a different approach of marketing where I started making short form videos and long form videos about packaging and showing people about how things are made. How was the iPhone box made? How much does it cost? What do they use? How do they temperature control the paper so it doesn't get too moist and dry up and right? So taking people behind the scenes of manufacturing made them fascinated about the industry. Teaching them about how things are made them understand the complexity of manufacturing. And showing them the applications of packaging in their everyday lives. Like, yeah, do you know the shampoo bottles that you use right now is made by this? Just made them want to talk about it more, made them want to watch it more. And if they're in the market for packaging, they eventually became a customer. And so we're now generating 6 to 8 million views per month on our short form content. This is a number that most manufacturers on earth cannot imagine. There's very little manufacturers that have a media side besides a few that I can think of off the top of my head, that is getting anywhere remotely close to the numbers that we're getting. And we spend $0 on marketing. We don't do any paid ads. So by getting the customers first, we built such a wide gap between us and the next competitor that we basically built a giant moat, right? Like now when you ask a lot of people who have seen our videos, who's the guy you go to for packaging, they think Packing Duck.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So would you say that social media is your main source of clients for Packing Duck?
Majority, but a lot of word of mouth too. There's people that consume our content that are not in the market for it. They're maybe someone's cousin, sisters, and whatever, but then they know someone who are in the market for it. They're like, oh, have you seen this video about this? Let me show it to you. And they became a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. You know, when I was checking out your content, preparing for this podcast, it really kind of registered how important packaging is when I thought about the products that I consume.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into this niche footwear called barefoot shoes.
Right.
And I have some like top of the line ones that were really expensive and they're awesome. And then I also bought like some very cheap ones on Amazon. And apart from the quality of the product, actually that is not even as big. But when I got the product in hand, I got this like, $40 pair of shoes from Amazon. And actually it came in just like a plastic bag. And to this day, whenever I put those shoes on, I use them for the gym or whatever, I remember that it came in no packaging. Right. And to this, I have this like little bit of a weird feeling like, man, that company didn't really care about me. They didn't even bother to put it at least in like a nice box or something like that. So it's so interesting how packaging is this massive part of the experience of buying something. And that's probably why we have all these like unboxing videos and everything. Like it's so important.
There's an experience to it that I think a lot of companies don't realize. And for good reasons, if they're going for the lower market route, they're just selling something for super, super cheap. They're like, people who are buying this don't really care. And then they're willing to look past that. But I truly believe that packaging has always been an afterthought, but it's really the first impression, right? It's an afterthought for a lot of brands because they're like, I'm going to focus on the main product. I'm going to make this core product and then I'll do the box. But I think Apple was really the first company that really made packaging the top of mind. So like if you've ever seen any iPhone boxes or if you buy a new iPhone, that's usually a box that you keep. It's out of any box that you buy in your life, most likely you've kept an Apple box over a shoe box. A shoe box you just toss. An Apple box you put it there just in case you want to do something with it. Because it's so nice. It's almost too nice to throw away. Because of Apple, now more companies are realizing, holy crap, that is the experience that I want to give people because for the first time, they felt what a good quality packaging does to the psychological side of you when you experience the product for the first time. It's really a whole experience. It's not just product. It's just unboxing it, taking out the ribbon, opening the box, and feeling it for the first time. That is a complete experience that brands are now emphasizing it on.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think it is that Apple does so well with their packaging that other companies could learn from?
It just makes sense. It's straightforward. There's no extra waste with their packaging. Everything that's in that box needed to be in that box, and everything that doesn't need to be, it's completely gone. So like you see the packaging revolution from the first iPhone to the current iPhone, it definitely got a lot thinner. Yes, the phone got a tiny bit thinner too, but not by that much. It's almost 50-60% thinner now of the current iPhone box versus the previous versions of iPhone boxes. And it's really because Apple's just straightforward for that. Like they know you don't need that extra space, right? Like every single layer within that box, it's designed to create a feeling. They could have put the cables on top first and instead of all in the bottom, but no, they want you to immediately open the box and see the phone. Some other electronics, when you open a box, there's a user manual on top, right? Like there's a sheet of paper, a little pamphlet, and then there's some plastics, and then there's whatever. But Apple wants you to go straight to the phone, take that out, take out the tray underneath, and there's a cable underneath. That's it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I remember, I think it was last year that Apple fans, and I'm an Apple user as well, got really upset that Apple removed the stickers, the classic Apple stickers from the box. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember this, but it's interesting. Yeah, on one hand, it like matches the Apple philosophy of like have nothing that doesn't, that's not needed. And on the other hand, it was like this heartbreak, like, oh no, the classic stickers are gone.
Yeah. I mean, people will like to complain for whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. So I'm curious, man, is there any sort of any other examples of like cool packaging that's out there? Maybe something that you guys do with Packing Duck that kind of stuck with you? Like, wow, this is, something really innovative, something that's, something that really stands out.
I think the coolest stuff are usually the PR boxes, which is what you send out to influencers and celebrities when you launch a new product. We did one for Quest bars, which is one of the largest protein bars in the United States. And they want to make protein brownies and muffins. And the whole idea between those products was that you want to be able to heat it up in an oven. And so we made a packaging box that looks like an oven, and you can pull out the tray like an oven, and inside there's a silicone oven mat for you to heat the muffins on top. So like we literally create a silicone mat that's oven safe for you to heat your muffins on top as a part of the packaging. And then you could pull out the second drawer and it'll be like a pack to, 6 packs of muffins and brownies, kind of like an oven tray. And I think that experience is cool because PR boxes is really the place where you can have a lot more fun because you can spend more money on it. But typically most companies, they are a little more conservative of how much they spend on packaging because, truthfully, at the end of the day, it is something that you do throw away, right? Yeah. So your packaging cannot be that much more expensive than your actual product. It has to be a certain percentage point.
Yeah, that sounds super cool. Again, something that you keep, right? So there's really something about buying something or getting something and then you keep the packaging as like a keepsake or something. That's super powerful.
Right.
Cool, man. Awesome, Jason. Thanks for sharing all of this, man. I just have one last question before we let you go. And I just really would love to know, throughout all these years, all these different companies that you've worked on, what were some of the biggest changes you went through as a person? Some of the biggest mindset shifts or things like that, how you changed as well?
I've definitely became more optimistic as a person. When you're running a company at the moment, when something bad happens to you, you think of the worst case scenarios and you think this is the end of your career and this is where you have to throw in the towel. But I've always believed, looking back now, that all the bad things that happened to me had to happen for the good things to happen. Like every single time I felt like I hit a wall or I felt I hit a bottom, something greater happened to me. And so rather than being in a mindset of just always being scared and fearful, now I'm just like, as long as I know I'm doing a good job and I know that I'm making the best decision that I can make, if something doesn't work right now, if a campaign flops or if an idea didn't work out, that's okay. That just means that I at least tried and I'm going to move on to do something even greater and something even 10, 50 times better than what that idea was. And that's generally been a very good North Star for me because I'm generally a very positive person. So changing that mindset to align with how I am personally helped a lot too.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. Optimism, definitely a major key. And do you have like a certain system you use for productivity or the way you prioritize things in order to juggle everything that you juggle?
I just use a notepad. I'm a simple notepad guy.
Amazing, Jason. Well, thanks so much for being on, man. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're looking to build your own team with incredible overseas talent, check us out at pair.so. We guarantee that we'll find your perfect overseas hire within 21 days. And if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you pay nothing. So it's 100% risk-free. Definitely recommend checking that out. And Jason, where do you recommend people check you and Packing Duck out?
Just go to our website, packingduck.com, and our Instagram, Packing.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being on, man.
Of course. Thank you.